We're at a city park here in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and we're going to do a little micro fishing here. There's quite a few really attractive species in this body of water. This is a 10-car rod that I'm using, and I've just got right now a 14 dry fly hook with a little small piece of worm. Some people do use flies, but some of the stuff that I fish for is just hard to get on artificials. What we've got here is a cardinal shiner. It's out of breeding coloration, so you don't see the typical reds that you normally see on them in photos and stuff. But this is a local endemic, and it's really only found in a few streams in the Ozark streams in northeastern Oklahoma. It has a couple other species in other watersheds that are very closely related. It's locally abundant in this stream, and just is a really beautiful stream fish that not many people know about. So I'm Colby Farquhar. I work for the wildlife department, and I grew up, spent most of my life in eastern Oklahoma. Always loved to hunt and fish. It's been a passion of mine, through my whole life. And I've kind of gone through different stages. I started out as a bass fisherman, catfishing, the game fish. And it's just kind of evolved into something that encompasses all the fish that we have. In Oklahoma alone, we've got somewhere around 175, 176 species of fish. We only have like 14 species of game fish, and there's just so much diversity in this state. Some really incredible looking fish, some absolutely gorgeous coloration, a lot of challenging species to locate, to figure out how to catch. And I'm just kind of started keeping a life list, a lot like birders do, of the fish that I've caught. And right now I'm still just a beginner. I've got about 86 species on my list. There are people out there that have well over 1,000 species. All right, so what I've got here, this is a juvenile bluegill. They're a pretty ubiquitous species. They're pretty voracious eaters. And I mean, you can find these things literally statewide. They're fun to catch. Most of us probably started out fishing with catching a bluegill. And they're very willing biters, and they're just a lot of fun. They're really attractive looking fish. And I think as most anglers, myself included, grow as anglers, we tend to forget about the small things and the things that we started on. But these guys are fun at any size, and you can find them just about anywhere. So something that's important with these smaller fish, they can be very delicate, so you always want to make sure your hands are wet. Try to handle them very gently. What we have here is a creek chub. You can see he's still got some really nice color on his fins. In these small Ozark streams, and really throughout a lot of the kind of northeastern US, these are kind of the top predator in these small streams. There he goes. So you can make this hobby as simple or as complicated as you want to. When I first started out, it was a stick that I picked up off the ground and a little bit of fishing line and a hook. And as time's progressed, I've gotten a few other things that make life easier. But to start out, if you want to try to ID what you're catching, you really need to have a field guide. If I had to choose just one field guide, it would probably be this Peterson's. It covers the fish across the entire US. It's relatively inexpensive, easy to find. you know, and will get you there. It really will. It's a pretty good book. But as you know, progress, or you're looking for more specific sample data to help locate a species or something, you might start looking for the state-specific field guides. These sometimes are a little harder to find, a little more expensive, because they're usually done by a university press, not a big publisher. Some species, the only way to tell them apart are via scale counts or something like that. Without having these things, you really don't know what you've got. You got to take really good pictures in the field. And that's where this, you know, this little photo box, it's actually like a Q-tip box or something. But you put the fish in it, you know, full of water, and that way you can get pictures where the fish's fins are flared out. You can count fins, fin rays, stuff like that. You know, having a net, I just made this thing out of a mesh bag and a forked limb, just something simple to kind of keep the fish wet. You know, these are small creatures. They're generally pretty delicate, you know, so always try to keep them wet, try to handle them gently. All right, so what we've got here is another species that you see a lot of in these kind of Ozark streams. This is a slender madtom, and it's a type of catfish, and they really don't get a whole lot bigger than this, maybe another inch, inch and a half, and you know, so that's a pretty good size, but just a really neat stream catfish that most people have never seen. So the equipment that I use now, my rod is just a 12-foot telescoping. It's typified by being called a tenkara rod. I find this really handy because a lot of species are a little bit skittish, so I can reach on out there a little ways. But if I'm fishing for something up close, I can slide the telescoping sections in and can fish practically right under my feet. So I find this to be very useful, and these things can be found online for, you know, $10, $15 for a cheaper one, and you know, it's easy to carry everywhere. I've carried this one on planes with me to multiple states at this point. All right. Thank you, man. So what I've got here is a male orange throat darter. And as you'll be able to see, they're just incredibly colorful, even this time of year when he's out of breeding season. But you can see the blue and the orange banding that he has on his body. Earlier in the year, mid-March through probably late May, these things will just be absolutely gorgeous. All those reds and blues will be so much more vivid. And this is only one species of quite a few. I mean, the darter species are some of our most diverse in the state, and they're all just incredibly unique, and most are very, very colorful. So if you're wanting to fish for darters, or really any really small fish species with a small mouth, the best thing that I've found, and I can't take credit for finding them, they're from Japan, and they're owner brand Tanago hooks, and they're designed for catching really tiny fish. These things are so incredibly tiny that it's really hard to bait them. But that's about the most reliable way to catch the darters and stuff. And there's actually a whole subculture of microfishing out there. You know, we've got tiny little floats now, tiny sinkers to, you know, not sink your tiny little float. You know, and this stuff is a little more specialty when you start really targeting the smaller stuff. But anybody can go to a fly shop, pick up a pack of small dry fly hooks or something like that, and with a stick they pick up on the bank and a little bit of fishing line, they're in business. We're very lucky to have some extremely pristine waters left in this state, and I'm very lucky in eastern Oklahoma to have access to things like the Illinois River here, or many of the streams around here, Barren Fork Creek, Spavinaw Creek. We've got some really nice quality streams, and when I'm out in these areas, a lot of times I may feel like I'm the only person around, and then I'll stumble up on Walmart sacks and clothing and everything, beer cans, and it just really breaks my heart to see the littering that takes place in some of these areas. If we can just pick up a little bit of trash and not throw some out, we'll keep these areas beautiful and pristine for years to come, for our children, for our grandchildren, because ultimately that's what this is all about.